Breadbox Media programming is brought to you by... Looking for exceptional coffee delivered fresh to your door? We have the answer. Our friends at Grim Bean Coffee produce small batch artisan coffee using top-tier coffee beans. The coffee is roasted when you order, guaranteeing the freshest coffee possible. Check out Breadbox Roasts, a new line of Catholic-themed coffees available at www.grimbeancoffee.com/Breadbox Media. Experience coffee like never before.
Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Lisa, Hendey, and Friends from Breadbox Media. I'm absolutely delighted this week to welcome a special guest to our podcast. The moment this person's book hit my desk, I knew I would need to have a conversation with her, and joining me today is Noelle Mering. Noelle is one of the co-authors of a beautiful book entitled Theology of Home, Finding the Eternal in the Everyday. And she's also the editor of the online magazine theologyofhome.com. Noelle writes frequently on topics of culture, politics, and religion, and has been published in the National Review, the Federalist, and the National Catholic Register. She and her husband are my neighbors in sunny Southern California, where they live with their 6 children. Welcome to the show, Noelle Mering.
Hi, Lisa. Great to be with you.
Such a treat. So before we dive into the beauty that is this wonderful book, I just want to get to know a little bit more about you and your family and where you are in your spiritual journey. So maybe you can start off with just a very quick story from your family life and your spiritual journey.
Sure. So my husband and I have been married for 21 years. We met actually at an evangelical Protestant school called Westmont in Santa Barbara. He was raised as a Protestant, and he converted. I'm a revert. I sort of started to practice my faith for a while, and so we embraced the full teaching of the church and have had 6 children. Our oldest is at the college now, and our youngest is 7, so we're kind of spanning the gamut of parenting right now. But and so, yeah, we're just striving to request to the Lord, to each other, to our kids, to our friends. We check all those boxes, but not in the main way of checking a box, but rather just in, striving to grow in love and really getting closer to God on a daily basis and how to do that. So that's kind of where we are now.
That's amazing. So funny. Just last week, I was having coffee with someone for the very first time. We just met for a little conversation, and she was a graduate of Westmont. So I'd never heard of Westmont before last week, and now I know 2 people who went there. So,
wow, so that's so fun.
And how beautiful that God brought the 2 of you together in that place, and that God's always been a part of your marriage. That's so lovely. So I want to dive into talking about Theology of Home. This is not your average Catholic book. When it came to me via Tan Books, it came in a very special way, and the book itself is quite different looking from the average books that we're getting across our desks or in our parish libraries lately. It's a hardcover, full color, beautifully photographed book. So tell me a little bit more about how this project came together, Theology of Home.
Sure. Well, at the time, we were working on a website called Helena Daily. We've since changed it to Theology of Home. And Carrie Gress, actually one of my co-authors, she was listening to a song about where the singer was singing about his deep desire to go home. And this phrase, Theology of Home, just came to Carrie, and she was just so struck by how home is that's really what we all want. We want to go home and ultimately to be with our Father in heaven. And so the 3 of us, Megan Schreiber and Carrie and I, just started talking about it. We got immediately so excited about this idea and this sense of that our homes are kind of an embodiment of what we all long for, that the things we want that we strive for, we want, ultimately our ultimate good is in heaven. And if we think about what heaven's like, is it like an office or a shopping mall? It just sounds so ridiculous.
Mine is like a beach in Hawaii.
like a beach in Hawaii. That kind of makes sense too. But really saying that it's like going to be like a homecoming resonates, right?
Yes.
That'll be somehow unimaginable, but also deeply familiar in a way that we never anticipated. And so our homes are kind of an embodiment for that for us now. They can be a foretaste of that ultimate belonging. But we're Catholics and we're incarnational people, and the tangible things matter. So we wanted to really connect these concepts with beauty and with the tangible, manifestations of our faith and family life lived together, and how we can, we all sort of want to be living a beautiful life. Home is important to us, and beauty is important to us. And the Catholic Church historically is, the biggest patron of beauty and the arts and culture. And so how to reclaim that in, a small way and just be part of a movement, because I think Catholics in general are really wanting that sort of return to beauty. So that was sort of the thought behind making it have such beautiful photography and, but also, not superficial writing. We really want the writing to be accessible, but also, meaty and, meditations and reflections and personal stories, and just kind of really trying to flesh out these concepts of why we all love home so much.
So the book is organized in sort of 3 parts: the essentials, the elements, and beyond the walls. I'd love to hear a little bit about each of those parts and what some of the sections that are contained within those are.
Sure. So the first part is the essentials, and that's kind of the idea of really it's kind of fleshing out of love. So we talk about how there's a sense of home that is connected to, it's sort of similar to the Mass in the sense that you can be in one place, but you're also sort of you're in the past, you're in the future. When I left for college, I remember my dad saying, "I'll see you in the Mass." And at first I didn't know what he meant, but then I realized once in the middle of Mass that, in the sacrament, the altar, that we are really united to Christ in the upper room, and we're also in part praising Him in heaven with the angels. And I was also, with my family. And
that's so beautiful.
It's a folding of time, and home is sort of like that. We think about home; it sort of can be a nostalgic way, where we're looking back on our childhood, but we're also always talking about, I want a forever home, and this longing for to build a home. And family is sort of like that too. That's kind of what our chapter on building is about. It's just that, we're building something up standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, but also for the future in mind of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and, passing the faith on to them, which has been passed to us. So the first part was sort of just setting those really crucial dynamics in place. And then the middle section is the elements, which are, what are the things, what is it that we want in our homes? We want to feel safe. We want comfort. We want nourishment, light, all these things. And it's the funny thing, the interesting thing is that we just kept noticing that with each one, it really is meant to be fostered and nourished in our home life so that we can be free of the need of it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, comfort, we need to, I know people who were deeply wounded by things they didn't receive in their home life. It wasn't a safe environment, they weren't given comfort. And they, in a way, talk about how they walk through life kind of looking backwards, just always seeking what they didn't get. And of course we know as Catholics that we're not meant for comfort, we're meant for greatness, that great quote. So, and to be people who seek after comfort is sort of silly in our adult life to put that as the highest good. However, it really is crucial and important to foster in order to become people who can be courageous and can sort of let it go and do bigger things in their lives as we venture out into the world. So, and the same thing with safety. We don't want to be people who are obsessed with safety or safe space or whatever, but we also have to have emotional safety and obviously physical safety. Our homes are meant to keep dangerous things out, but they're also meant to foster good things within, and that type of vulnerability. People don't like to have sincere, vulnerable relationships unless they feel safe to do that. Mm-hmm. So we need that in our families. So it's sort of those types of things in the middle of the book, and then towards the end, it's really kind of looking outward, like how do we, we have to be ready to, ultimately leave our homes. And we have some great anecdotes and stories about a cardinal who was imprisoned, and he ended up finding his prison cell to be his cathedral, and finding home in even the most challenging of circumstances. Because we're basing it on our relationship with God, not on a structure. And then, we talk about Mary as the ultimate homemaker, and sort of end it on her, which is a great place.
A great place to start and a great place to end. One of my favorite chapters in the book is in that middle section, and it's a chapter on order. And I think I gravitated toward that chapter because it's not necessarily one of my strong suits. It is one of my husband's kind of love languages. He's a very orderly person. And when we were newlyweds, one of the biggest things that I struggled with was the fact that he was quite tidy and ordered in his existence. And I had been raised the opposite in a family with 5 kids. And I mean, it was kind of crazy if your socks matched. It was kind of special and all that. But so I came to that chapter expecting one thing from the title of it, and was delighted to find that you invoke this thought that order creates an environment where we can be creative and where we can, where other things can be fostered, where beautiful craftsmanship happens. And you quote in that chapter Saint Therese of Lisieux and also C.S. Lewis. Did you find yourself kind of drawn toward any particular chapter in the book or any particular section that meant most to you personally?
That's a great question. Well, I also love that chapter on order. I really liked the chapter on balance, about the husband and wife, the order, the balance between husband and wife, and how theology of home really can be for men too. That was a fun one for me to write. And, actually hospitality was, I was a little bit nervous when I was writing that one because I'm not a very formal hostess. Well, am I really a person to write about this? But in thinking about it more, just sort of realized that there's actually really fascinating ways in which hospitality there's an archetype of, these strangers coming to our door and angels disguised as strangers. And it's, there's there's imagery of Christ, there, and even in Homer and the story of Odysseus coming to a servant and disguised as a servant, and his servant welcoming him, and how, I think we can become really performative with our hospitality. And It can be about us. I want people to think I'm this amazing, woman with this beautiful style and all this great dishes. And it really is the exact backward attitude that we're supposed to have about hospitality, which is that we have to love the stranger because, we see Christ in him. We can't love what we don't know. So how do you love a stranger? You love him because he's in the image of God. And, that's the harder part. Obviously, with our friends, it's easier because we already have natural affinity and affection for them. But even that, just extending ourselves more to bring people into our homes and, not necessarily, it's a real evangelical tool. We have this one part of the book where we talk about how you can't always get somebody to Mass, but you can get them into your kitchen table. And
sometimes it's more effective.
Yeah, sometimes it's more effective, too, because liturgy can seem so foreign, but everyone understands home and family. And so, so how to do that in a way that's really other-oriented, not so that they can, we talk about wanting people to be invited into the intimacy of Catholic family life. And I always want to be careful to also qualify that. It's not because we're going to be so great and they're going to see us, so much as it's because we're hoping to reflect Christ in some way and point to him. And what did Christ do? Christ listened to people, and he made them feel, I think to be in his gaze would be to know you were deeply loved and you're deeply important and significant. And so really, hospitality ultimately in my mind is about making the other person feel important to you, and seeing the beauty and the goodness in them and entering into deep friendship in that way,
Do you think that's something that you can cultivate if you don't come by it naturally? I ask that because I tend to, when I'm in a position to extend hospitality sometimes fall into the, the Martha versus Mary stereotypes, and to get it very much in my Martha mode. And we're experiencing something in our life here in Los Angeles. My husband is the chair of the emergency department at UCLA, and part of his responsibilities involve recruiting new residents. So during this fall season of the year and winter, we have medical students coming to interview each week, and we made the decision that we are going to, at the end of those days, invite everyone over to our home for dinner, rather than going to kind of like a banquet hall or something like that we would have it in our backyard. And graciously for me, it is catered. We usually bring like a taco truck or a barbecue or something like that, but I don't have to cook. And I found myself able to kind of really enjoy these moments when we have, our backyard fills with 60 people, most of whom are just these incredibly bright young people and coming, to LA maybe for the very first time, and to just be able to sit and relax with them and hear their stories and not worry about what I'm serving has made me think of having people over at my house in a whole new way. So maybe you can teach an old dog new tricks, but if you're somebody who doesn't kind of naturally feel the gift of hospitality, how can you cultivate that in yourself?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think that's a common experience, right? Is that we do turn into Marthas when we're going to be hosting people, because there's a lot to be done. It's just there's a lot of practical considerations. And oftentimes, our house, my bathroom is rarely ready to have guests over. So there's just a lot of those little details that you absolutely have to address. So, I think you can cultivate it, just by, I read this great article once about, it was called Masters and Disasters in Marriage. And it was talking about how this man he was a counselor, I think. He could recognize couples that were going to be successful or not based on how the smallest details, which were, are you scanning to affirm your spouse, or are you scanning to criticize your spouse? And I always thought that was really helpful. And I think that that's applicable to our friendships too, and how we get to know other people. Just that we would be listening to them and looking for things that are interesting, and just not in a performative way, not in a contrived way, but if you ask people enough questions, oftentimes you find something really interesting, and you could dive deeper into that. And people like to feel like someone's interested in them.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. And I also think for myself that a lot of times I think, oh, well, I can't have anybody over because I'm not a great cook and I'm not really interested in cooking. Well, there's lots of different ways to invite people into our homes, and certainly for a meal is one of them. But, I've found that it's much more my comfort zone to have friends over in the morning and, have coffee and maybe a pastry or something. Yeah. And then I can really focus on having them there.
Yeah, I think that you got to go with your strengths. So, if I have people over, I'm not a great cook. My husband is, but if I'm initiating some type of social gathering, it's almost always charcuterie, because I can open up some cured meat and buy some good cheese and put out a couple bottles of wine, and throw some nuts around and maybe some fruit. It's so easy. It takes such little skill, but I think everybody kind of loves charcuterie. So that's sort of my go-to entertaining
Hey, that's
weapon.
A great tip. Well, let's talk for just a minute. You used the phrase before when you were discussing our Blessed Mother Mary, sort of the ultimate homemaker. And I want to talk about that word for just a few moments, because some people kind of bristle at that word and they think, I'm not a homemaker. I think of one of my sisters who's an excellent homemaker, and she's a full-time attorney. She's a partner in her law firm and, mom of two very accomplished sons. But she makes her home and she welcomes it. So say a little bit about what that term homemaker means to you.
Yeah, it's such a loaded term. I mean, I even hesitate to use it about myself sometimes. And although, I guess I'm not strictly a homemaker since I work too, but I have been for many years. And, I think there's some obvious reasons why it's stigmatized, which are, there's been a real effort to stigmatize it, starting with, Betty Friedan, who said a life spent caring for one's children is a life wasted. And, these ideas seem maybe overly strident to us now, but they really seeped into the culture, and we have so much branding of womanhood. And I think we really want to see womanhood embodied. When I was growing up, I remember thinking, what is it to be a woman? What's my life going to look like when I grow up? And I think the image we're presenting constantly now is that beauty is power. And, that it's about what we do. It's not about who we are or what we're fostering. And it's also, I don't want to, it's also not an easy life always. There's a real hiddenness to motherhood that we also see in Our Lady. I think she's such a beautiful model of a hidden life. But we are very public people now. We kind of find our value in what we're seen doing. Obviously that's exacerbated in social media, but it's really the reverse that's true. Like our power and our love is all grown through our hidden life, starting with our interior life of our soul, with our life of prayer, and then it has to flow out of that next into our homes, next into our friendships, into our neighbors, into our communities, into our life at work. But I think we try to reverse it. We think, well, we can just ignore our interior life and just do good things, or and it winds up us being really frenetic, I think, because we're not rooted. And so I think that homemaker has become a dirty word because of those things. The hidden life is a life we kind of recoil from. It's by definition not a life focused on something glamorous. And because there's been such a marketing scheme against it. And I think, we immediately almost think of it in the terms of what movies tell us, which are that to live this hidden life to have a life of sacrifice is a life of being oppressed and pathetic and letting people take advantage of you, and it can be that. Certainly people have lived lives where they're taken advantage of and they're, it's not a healthy dynamic, but that is not, it's a real disconnect between what they say the life is like and what I find in my own life and in my community and amongst my friends, that, these are lives of a lot of love and joy and mutual care and partnership. And that even whether the wife is a homemaker or not, most women really care about their homes and fostering all the good things. And we love the craft of domesticity, which is funny now. Everyone makes bone broth, and it's really a real return to all these old crafts. But that word is
there's a resurgence for things.
Yeah.
Things of the home. Well, I think that comes a little bit from something else that I wanted to ask you about, which is sort of the Instagram culture that we're living in. And I just wonder, so with an eye toward wanting every woman to avoid the plague of perfectionism and the plague of comparison, was there any thought when you guys were creating not only the book, but also, your Instagram presence and the website that's so beautiful, theologyofhome.com. Are you ever concerned that people might look at these resources with any kind of despair, and how would you encourage them not to compare, what they have versus what they see in a picture?
Yeah. No, I had someone actually say something about that. This doesn't look like my house, but I think it's beautiful. And I think I feel it's a big question, because on one hand, I don't think that people, we look at the success of magazines. We look at them in some ways because they are just so other than our lives and beautiful. So we certainly didn't want to make a book that didn't have opportunities for inspiration. But what we want is inspiration, not comparison, right? We don't want to obviously discourage anyone. And my house is in there, and it's not anything spectacular by any means. It's more of a regular house. But then we had some houses that were a bit more grand. So we really wanted to have a variety. And about the Instagram culture, I think it's tricky, because certainly it can encourage comparison, I have to look perfect, I have to make my life look like this or that. But it's also, I think I see a real community that people have built, and women who are maybe don't have physical community but have found community on Instagram. And so I certainly would not want to disparage that Instagram is a blanketly, we love it. I think I like seeing other people's lives and getting peeks into other people's experiences. So, and on the website, we certainly, we are aggregating our links every day, and half of them about the faith generally, and half of them about sort of more the fluff that, we love and we think are important. But we put out there a lot of articles that are about suffering. So certainly the substance of the site is more meaty than just a perfect image by any means. So I think that I think it's tricky, and I think perfectionism, the way to combat it is, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's really through the interior life, right? Perfectionism is a concern with ourselves. It's not a concern with God. And, comparing ourselves to other people is such a waste of time. It's hard. We all do it. I do it. It's inevitable, but, we find our value in God, not in comparing ourselves to another women.
One of the things that I really love about the photography in the book, too, is that it's not an unattainable perfection. It's when I look through the book, and I have many times, because I have it in a place that I see it quite frequently on display because it's so lovely, and I see the details and the textures, and most of all what comes through is the light and the joy that we all want in our lives, and not a particular set of dishes or my house to have a certain kind of flooring or whatever, but I want the nurturing for my family that is present in a resource like this. So it's just so beautiful. I'm really grateful. I want to ask you kind of logistically, maybe you can tell us once again the names of your co-writers and the photographer, and then also kind of how you put it together.
Sure. So the three writers are myself, Carrie Gress, and Megan Schreiber, and the photographer is Kim Bale, who's local friend of mine in Ventura, California. So we just separated out the writing, and then it was really collaborative. We passed things back and forth and edited and smoothed things out, and the photography was great. Kim, she did a few houses out here, a few houses back east, and then we worked with Tan, just kind of trying to figure out the layout and really nail that. And we wanted to have this real blend of, like, I love how you said about the textures, because that was really important to us. We really wanted to be filled with all these textures and lots of life. And, I think there's a sterility to a lot of contemporary home magazines and books, and we really wanted to have the opposite of that, with pregnant women and children. And so that was a really fun piece, was seeing it all come together, the visuals come together with the words.
How did you feel when the book came and you got to hold it for the very first time?
Oh, it was great. There was a little piece of me that I thought, what if I get it and something's awful about it? And I'd seen it online, of course, but you don't know until you're, especially because this is such the visuals are so important to this particular book. So I thought, until I actually hold it and see it and flip through it, I'm going to feel a little bit nervous. But once we got it, it was just thrilling. It was really exciting.
Beautiful.
It felt like a big relief. Yeah.
Do you think that you guys will work on another project similar to this in the future?
Well, we just might be. We are actually talking to Tan about a follow-up. So, yeah, stay tuned.
Okay, well, fingers crossed.
But, yeah.
And next time we interview about whatever comes next, I'm going to take you out for coffee in Ventura. I'm within such a close drive. So, well,
let's do it.
I'm so honored, Noelle, to have had the chance to speak with you. And I'm just wondering if there are any kind of closing thoughts or anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like to share with the listeners.
Well, I'll point people to our website, which is theologyofhome.com. We also have some products that are linked from there on POH Mercantile Shop. And yeah, I think I'll end with one of my favorite stories, which is that I think it's a universal story, that when I first knew I would marry my husband, when I started to realize that he was my home. And I think that signifies to all of us that our homes are about our relationships, it's about love, who we belong to, not where we belong. So I hope that can be a big takeaway of the book, just that our homes are for the sake of the people in them, not the reverse, and ultimately, for our growth and our love for God.
So beautiful. Our guest again has been Noelle Mering. Noelle, thank you so much for your time today and for all that you're doing to cultivate family and home for us. You can find Noelle at her website, noellemering.com. She has 2 L's in her name, and I'm going to make sure that I have links in the show notes to both her website and to theologyofhome.com. So wherever you're listening to the podcast, just take a look at the show notes and you'll find links there, as well as an opportunity to purchase this book either through Tan Books or in other online vendors. Noelle, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, friends, that is it for this week's show. I'm just really hoping that you'll check out this resource and also that you'll spend some time over at theologyofhome.com. These homemakers have created just an absolutely beautiful resource for all of us. So check it out. Might be the perfect thing to start the new year with. And that is it for this week's show. So I'm going to ask you once again, as I always do, just to please keep our parents in your prayers. My family is going to be going through some interesting times in the weeks ahead with my mom and dad, so I'll ask for prayers there. And just know that you are always in my prayers, and that my prayer for you as we begin a new year is just that you have the love of the Lord and that you look for ways to share that this year. I want to say thank you again to our friends at Breadbox Media, and that's it for this week's show. So God bless. Have an awesome week.
Breadbox Media programming is brought to you by. It's so much more than just a profile picture. At Catholic Singles, our platform offers you many opportunities to get to know the person behind the picture. Sign up today at CatholicSingles.com. Jack Kane Ford. Find your next Ford Tough vehicle at CaneFord.com.